I hope it neat. Hmm. I'm not on.
What?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
That's good. I don't know why my Discord has so many issues before a panel.
So I give it probably 2 or 3 more minutes for people to file in
Okay.
because I guess they don't know the other one's running or this new one's running now yet.
Yeah.
Let's see your panel, which is my panel, room number 17. I think so. Believe it or not, when I first joined the dragon community on Usenet, most dragons went meat. That seems to have fallen off over time. $17.02. I'll give this just about 1 more minute. Yeah, somebody ought to be recording. I don't know who. Like, I don't even think I have the capability to record over here. I don't have that set up. I'm just chilling. Um, chilling. Are you there? And are you joining? Yay! Thank you for starting recording. Well, if just I love you, and I will get your name right one day. It's just not a natural letter in my alphabet. So I'm gonna start now. It's 1703. So welcome to the Dragon History Channel, and also Oldies Beat Me. And honestly, this is gonna end up being a bring your own dragon thing too, because I didn't know what that was when I named the panel, but it ended up that it represents the format that I do want to actually take here. But I should probably start off first by, I guess, I'll just say that I have been part of the dragon community since around 1997. Well, maybe late 1996, early 1997. I went through a few names in the beginning, um, but quickly got to Riceley. But by the time I was going around as Riceley, I had already left news groups and stuff. Yeah, I actually find that pretty common in that whenever I go into one of these communities, half the people are were born after I joined the community, and it's like um, I don't know what it's like actually. So um, I guess I want to start at 1996, 1997. I'm going to first go over how I actually found dragons online, and just in case people haven't heard that yet. Um, so, as you might have heard in one of the other panels, I had actually been awakened since I was 7, and I'm going to rush through my what do you call it, time online. Um, that started like when I was in 16. I'm going to rush through 7 to 15 because I think that my experience feeling and knowing that I wasn't human and that there were multiple people who were part of me, and also not having any internet in those days, between like 1983 and 1995 or so, I was kind of stuck with no context for it. Like I did not. There was no like place to go out there and see. Okay, this is Draconity. This is Therianthropy, and this and that. What we had in those days were encyclopedias. They didn't say anything about any kind of Draconity or Therianthropy. It was more like if you got anything, it was about clinical lycanthropy, and you got maybe a blurb of text there. So I spent about 10 years between my awakening and getting on the internet, utterly out, having this aspect of me being a complete mystery, except I could see spirits, I could see particular fairies, but I didn't know why other than I was nuts. Now it turns out I wasn't nuts, but as far as was concerned at that time, as far as my parents were concerned at that time, I was nuts. Oh come on, I made that joke before. Yeah, I am actually watching a panel discussion, and because I'm so ADHD, I might respond to some things in real time. So, so I didn't have any context as to how I was different from other people. All I know is that when I was 9, 11, and 13 years old, I was checked into 3 different mental hospitals. I'm not going to get into details on that. I got a plethora of diagnoses, none of which were right, because, I mean, they simply didn't have an understanding at that time. And I'm not even sure if I would go to a psychiatrist right now, whether they would get it right. But I know that according to them, I have ADHD of a severe nature and a couple of other diagnoses. Schizophrenia was one of the early ones, but then they said that's not it. It's something else, but we don't know what it is. It could be clinical lycanthropy. It could be something. But the only thing is, I didn't think I was a wolf, so that they didn't think it would be that. So they were just left with a whole bunch of scratch on a map, and they said bipolar disorder. But all these things that were happening to me, they would have explanations later, which is when we get to about 1995 is when I got internet access that didn't go through a bulletin board system and basically just let me get on IRC through a gateway. I got internet access about when I was 17 years old and started exploring online. And when I went online, I didn't think I wasn't even looking for these answers. I was just thinking, hey, I'm the weird one. So, and I'm irrecoverably weird. The internet is not going to be weird. But at least when I browse it, that nobody knows who I am. But so they can't really associate my weirdness with a person. Well, one of the reasons I ended up on the internet was to read news groups. I was curious about those. I had a particular curiosity at that time because I was obsessing over Barney the purple dinosaur for some reason, and how much I did not identify with that guy. And I hung out in a news group, Barney dinosaur, die, die, die. Well, one day a dragon walks into this news group. His name's Kyremius, and he has a major objection with the people in the news group that basically they were calling Barney the Great Worm, spelled W-Y-R-M, and they shouldn't do that because that was offensive to dragons. And I'm like reading this thread, and he starts talking about how he's a dragon. This was eye-opening event number, I don't know where it is in the numbers because but it was the major eye-opening event where I saw that there was any inkling that anybody could feel the way because I didn't even have a hold on species yet. I just knew that I looked like what you would call a dragon, and there was another person in party that I didn't know what she was, but she ended up being a fox. The problem is that you can look at a fox when you're so disconnected from everything like that. You can look at a fox and not recognize it as somebody else that that is in basically a person in your mind, because you don't really. I didn't have the ability to really focus on perceive who Elena was and who Mermy was, and there by that time there was also Miranda. But the thing is that I didn't have context, and without any context for these experiences, without anybody to talk to about them, without anybody who actually knew anything about it, I was kind of lost. I just thought, okay, well, I've got multiple people in me. They're not human. I'm not human. Whatever. I'm weird. And then there's this guy suddenly that there's a dragon in comes into this community, and I look at the cross posting information and I see alt ban dragons. Yes, I am a system. Yes, I was a system before getting online. It actually caused me to be misdiagnosed schizophrenic early in my life. But beside the point, so I went over to Alt Ban Dragons, looked at what was going on there. There's all these dragons in here. I had seen myself in dreams as a winged creature that I thought was covered in scales, and I guess that's what I didn't really. I could see that. I could see that I was some kind of creature that could be classified as a dragon, but I mean, again, those were nebulous concepts to me at that time. At that time, I didn't know what I was. But once I found other dragons and started looking at pictures of dragons, because it's weird, in that period of 1995, 1997, the people who were exploring identity, this is the only place they were. So, I mean, of course, there was other news groups, but this was my first encounter with it. So, I ended up participating in Alt Ban Dragons on and off for a while. And that part of the community was, well, for one thing, there was a lot of what we would call wares these days. Not wares as in werewolves. I mean wares as in dragon families. And now you're probably know the meaning of that particular word as in W-E-Y-R. And yes, exactly. And it's like, okay, am I supposed to belong to one of these things? And I didn't really know if that was the case or not. But I mean, I just started talking to people about their experience, and then It seemed like some role play was going on, but then I realized these people weren't role playing; they were doing something else. Ooh, cool. And what I would call that now is persona play, which is basically you have an entity that you are on the inside, but you have no way to experience that or to express that or experience that on the outside because you're trapped in this dragon body. So everybody was basically play acting out what they wanted to do and be in this form while talking about their own identity as dragons. And myself, I had no ability to express at all. I knew that I identified with dragons, but I didn't have any. I certainly didn't have any experience being one except for what I could remember, little flashes from previous lives. So, so the first part of the history I'm going to start with is alt ban dragons. For everybody who didn't get on the internet until 2005, I would say, this might be new. We had what we were called news groups, which was kind of like a forum, except it was a forum of forums that you would have to find a news group server and subscribe to it, and you participated through subscribing to it. And there was a lot of them. There was Alt Ban Dragons. There was Alt Ban Furry for the Bambles in the crowd. There was Alt Lifestyle Furry, which was basically the beginning. Yeah, news groups AZK Usenet, aka NNTP. Just chill and please define terms if I don't end up doing that. So the way you would get through the interact is through a news group meter. It was news group, not a news group meter, a news group client, and it was a lot like mail. It was a lot like email, except you basically, when you subscribed to a group, you were subscribing to a set of posts that would come in like email, but be on a certain topic, and you got everything in that topic, and then you could reply back and forth with people. And there was at one point a AFD Alt Ban Dragons family tree. I decided to start my own where because I don't remember exactly why. I think it was just because I didn't feel like I had imposter syndrome. I think when it came to it, and my attitude, my way of dealing with feeling like I'm on the outside of something is to make, what do you call it, grow my own tree. Yes, that would be a good way to put it. Asking Twitter to email you every post in a hashtag, or and it would get crazy. In some news groups doing that, you would literally be spammed to death, and some of them had encoded binaries for sharing around programs which would explode your mailbox. But that group went on for a very long time, but I left it for other places because at some point spammers found Usenet, and they just started deciding that either we can spam trolls it up into news groups, or we could simply spam things like the kind of spam you get in the email. they basically started doing to the news groups what they would do to email later on, which was to treat it like email and spam the shit out of you. And the major trolls that would get involved in stuff, the biggest group was the Meowers, which back in those days, trolling was a different thing. All they really cared about was going into news group and posting meow in big letters to every post. That's why they were called the Meowers. Their system of trolling was simply to post meow to every post. They weren't even fighting anybody or trying to actually get reactions out of people. But then other groups would come in with their own names, and then they would get into wars with Meow and Wolf and I don't remember any other groups. I could just remember the Meowers because pretty much eventually every other post was going to be a meow. And because the nature of news groups was that there wasn't a high level of security. The person who administered news groups were the news group server administrators, and those people really didn't care what was going on in news groups. They just cared about keeping stuff online. They did not get involved in what was being talked about. So if you were being trolled by somebody, actually somebody trying to hurt you or something in some mental or emotional or metaphysical way, you weren't going to get action from the admins. And eventually people stopped admitting servers or making them sign up only because basically spam got out of control. Yeah, pretty much. My next step, and pretty sure this is where I ended up meeting chilling. Just chilling. Oh, okay. Someday I will, what do you call it? I gotta stop being frustrated about that. Anyway, the next place I ended up was Alphandria Muck. Now, one of the reasons that I ended up there is because Olena was off doing furry mucks about this time, and we were getting some form of experience in programming in the muck language called Muff. And multi-user forth is what Muff is. It's what it stands for. Is basically a programming language that you multi-user forth. It was a programming language that was reverse Polish notation style, if you know what that is. That you use to program actions and games and things that help you move and enhance the environment on whatever muck you were. Yeah, you manipulated the stack directly. I ended up learning from what Elena was doing on the furry mucks and decided I'm going over here. I was already, I think I'd met just chilling by then. And we had an egg. But on the side of that, I was also coding. So I was developing new programs on that muck. I believe I still have a WizBit or on there, either that or Muckerbit. But we're going to advance for a moment to the age of the Alphandria muck, which is basically and I'm going to go over to IRC because IRC is parallel with this period in history, but I want to do the muck first because muck was happier. On Ada Betis, who was an Olbie dragon at that time in the community, I have no idea where he is now, that Ada Betis created the Alphandria muck, and it was to become a environment for dragons to exist in. So it was, I mean, muck is kind of like IRC, but it's also more role playing and self-expression oriented. and that you could build your areas out of descriptions. Like anybody could come on, get a build bit, and add their own areas to this muck. So if you had an idea, like if you had your hearth home, I'm pronouncing it right. Your heart home. If you had your heart home and you knew it and it was in your head, you could build it on that muck and allow people to come into it and interact with you in it. I mean, I have to admit, I did that. And I was pretty much happy on that muck for a while. And I was building a number of different areas there. And just basically adding code to it, because now there's probably less than 100 people left on Earth who know how to use the multi-user forth, but it wasn't a very common programming language that many people would get into. But parallel with that, if you didn't want to be in an environment where dragons were basically going around being dragons and creating their heart homes in text in an online place with all other dragons, who wouldn't want that? I loved it. But there was also IRC, which I was hanging out on there. Now, IRC actually goes a little bit before I joined the muck, because at that time, around that time, there was Dalnet. Dalnet was an IRC network that didn't really have anything to do with dragons in and of itself. However, it had a channel that was just called #AFD. And that AFD channel was an IRC channel where all the dragons would come and talk in real time. And I love real time talk. I don't have that as many. I have a number of posts on the Usenet news groups, but mostly I hung out on IRC and then on the muck after that. And those were basically happening at the same time. So, yep. I probably was still going by Neuromancer during the Downnet time. So I think that we had seen each other and talked before, but yeah, Itabeta said he was starting up a muck, and then AFD as a channel that just kept on going, but other people started making other channels on other networks. Like you could find different dragon channels on Usenet, and there was another one, IRCnet, but AFD was the main one at that time. But eventually, I would also, around 1998 or so, find Draconic.com. And at that time, I decided, like, I was interacting with a lot of people on Draconic.com, but I also prefer real-time communication. Yep, I'm reading that. Oh yeah, I had some limited contact with alt horror werewolves, but Olena had even more than that. But I'll let her talk later. But at that time, I was doing basically three things: Muck and IRC and Draconic.com, and I decided, you know what? Since there's all these other channels coming about, why don't we have a Dragon IRC server? So I decided to put up a Dragon IRC server, and at first that was called quelm.draconic.com, because me and Syra were best friends, and I were like, at that time we were best friends, and we were like, sure, let's do this together. But then Syra and Malathar, they went off on do their own thing, and I ended up just, okay, I guess they're going off to do their own thing for whatever. I'm just going to call this irc.draconic.com. And I met with Canis. Actually met with Canis in the 90s and spent some time at his house. And we decided that we were going to make that the official IRC server for Draconic.com. And it was also, honestly, I would call Alphandria the official dragon muck. If you were a dragon, you wanted to be on Alphandria. A lot of other mucks. There was like furry muck, there's tapestries, a lot of other places where dragons were, and they have very specific reasons for being in those other places. Some of them are. Alphandria's still up and running, but basically nobody's on it. I was on SPR. That's probably still up. Furry muck is still up. Tapestries will be there forever. I ran a few mucks of my own, but they were Pokemon mucks. So, well, our system did. I ran a little bit, but just because I was one of the ones in the system who know enough, but they were mostly Elena's. But I never seen a Pern fan muck. And it's too late to find out now, so. So around that time, that's the three major dragon communities were Alphandria, and then irc.draconic.com had lots of dragons on it. So did the AFD channel. News groups around that time, people were starting to leave news groups, pretty much for the reasons I did. A couple dragon sites popped up, of course. Draconic.com was the first. I never got involved in draconity.org, so I don't really know what went on there. But by that time, we as a system were learning more about the community, like the other king community in general. And other people in the system decided, okay, I want to get involved in this. I want to get involved in that. And we started getting split a lot of ways. So once I'm probably going to gravitate into other kin history here. Oh, yeah, I had ICQ too. My number was 154074. And if it was gold, I'll type that out. I started using ICQ and like, I remember your ICQ number. Darn it. I actually remember your number. But you really couldn't have like a group on ICQ at that point. I think that came when AIM rolled around and added functionality. ICQ and AIM eventually merged, and AOL Instant Messenger was AIM. So something happened during that time, which I forgot. I have utterly forgot what the drama was and who it involved, but I think it was a combination of having a conflict with somebody on the Alphandria muck, and also at that time I was struggling with people who were being another faction on the IRC who wanted to run things, and it's like I'm not going to argue with this. I'll argue with all you all, but like this, but then somehow something happened where my IRC server got unlinked, because you can actually have multiple IRC servers on an IRC network, and you basically like, so I could be irc.draconic.com. Another person could come in with another server. I can allow them to link, and then their people and my people are now linked together. And I had a whole bunch of other people, and we kind of formed a council of doing this IRC thing. And sometimes maybe that was a mistake, because now there's because I wanted a community, but some people just want power. And I remember that being a thing where I think that might have been it. Just chilling. I'm going to stop with that. See, more practice later. I think that the root of me leaving the dragon community came about because of the fight over the Draconic.com IRC network. And I think I lost it at that point because I had lost something that I created to the other people that I brought in to be part of it, to grow a community. But so that's basically what happened around 2003, 2004, when I became more of a dragon in the other community than directly associating with the dragon community. And I got more into learning about the otherkin aspect of myself and how that fit. Because, okay, so side thing, I think that we can't, and I will understand if people like walk out at this point because we kind of been there. But this gets into the Therian community too, and what I was going through at the time with them. Around 2000, well, I wanted to become part of the Therian community, but in 1998. But they didn't do dragons there. Straight up, dragons were not real. And since they weren't real, they couldn't be Therian, because Therians only encompass real animals that are on Earth, existent, proven here. And I was like, you know what? So what? I'll just be in the Draconic community. But Elena, who actually needs the floor now? Hold on. Okay, we're changing presenters. Bye. Yep. Oh God, 2011. Well, I had that in 1999. And since this is now Elena talking, I'm going to. I'm not going to bother to introduce myself now. We could do that later because honestly, it will take too much time. But I want to go over my part at this point in history, what was going on with the Therian community, because it's interrelated. It's very interrelated in the history of the dragon community, the Therian community, the Otherkin community, and the vampire community. There was a lot of elitism back then, and a lot of that stemmed from what I would call purity of the kind. In other words, the otherkin would be all like, you can't be otherkin if you're Therian, but the otherkin were a lot different about it. But groups that were more focused, like dragons, elves, vampires, etc. Like, if you shared qualities with both or more than one community, you were unlikely to be accepted in either community. Their biggest problem with me as a fairy fox was that I was part fairy. You can't be part fairy. You're either a fox or you're a fairy that has fox attributes. But I never had this problem. I'm going to sit here straight up and say I never even coming out as a fox myself to the Draconic community. They never gave me any shit about being a fairy fox. But the fairying community, holy crap. They thrilled me to the point of, let's just say, a 7-letter S word. Early termination, as one might put it. I didn't make it through that emotionally, but then after I went through all that, I was like, you know what? Yeah. I was like, you know what? I'm going to create my own community. Screw this. So I started Kitsuhana. And of course we welcome dragons, but it was fox focused. And I ran that from 2006 to 2011 when there was even kitsune gatekeeping. Like, there were one of the reasons that I ended up creating Kitsuhanas because I wanted to participate in a live journal group. Oh, that's another community that would came after IRC and MUX and before major other things is live journal. Live journal was kind of like your own personal blog. Yeah, and then later Dream Width. I don't remember if I have a Dream Width account, but I look at the cringe on my live journal once in a while. And basically me and Ricefly sharing an account and me having the previous things. Of course, at that time, Muramy wasn't talking at that time. She stuck entirely to the MUX. So she would just be there on the MUX. Did not talk on live journal. But me and Ricely would, and it was a confusing mess because I probably should have made 2 accounts at that point for both of us. But people wouldn't know who was talking. People didn't want to understand who was talking. Oh yeah, that's another form of gatekeeping that existed then. If you had more than one entity associated with you, they just considered you a role player. Like, if you try to explain DID to them, they would basically just say, this is not a role-playing place. No attempt to understand whatsoever. The world was not ready for DID back then. Let's see here. What? Beep. I wanted to look at something quick. So, one of the things that I ended up doing because of that is I made my own forum called Kitsuhana. Like I said, mostly foxes. We accepted all kinds of other kin. I did have one stipulation on users when they joined, which was to be able to explain why they felt they were otherkin, or a kitsune, or a dragon, or whatever. And I did that because I wanted people to either show that they were searching or and they were looking for some sense of their self, or if they were already well established in and knowing who they were. Because I didn't want to gatekeep, but I also didn't want invasions. So, and I thought at the time that if I have this thing where everybody actually at least has to explain why they believe what they believe, then that would mean that they had done at least basic research and self-reflection and self-introspection. I would later drop this requirement and kind of regret it, because basically just everybody would start to come in. And by the year 2008, 2009, we were starting to get the first other kin trolls. People who realized that honestly, Draconic Net had them in 2005. They had this one persistent person who would make different characters, define proxies, and basically they would play the long game when it came to emotional abuse. Snowy was their name. And they would basically make deep friendships with other dragons only to basically set them up to be crushed when they would eventually tell them none of this is real and you aren't real and everything. And they would keep coming back. I have no idea what was wrong in their heads that they felt they had to find dragons and crush their spirits. Maybe they were a dragon slayer. I don't know. Maybe they were a dragon slayer in a previous life, but they were very persistent. But anyway, I started to get the same thing in about 2010 when it came to Kitsuhana. And as I said before, forums aren't really my thing. I built a forum because I knew I could do better. But at the same time, I couldn't keep up with everything. So I started sliding away from the forum and deprecating it. And now we go on to the next age of history and where we're going to get back to dragons again. Second Life. I joined Second Life in 2004. And now I was also running Kitsuhan during this time. Damn it, Elena just interrupted. Okay, Ricely again. Me. I'm going to start presenting again, so not from Fox's perspective, because she just was here for Kitsuhana. So we, as a system, joined Second Life. And there was a group of Sims that was basically what was known as the Dragon Sims. They had names like Draco and Ware and Dragon's Lair and a whole bunch of other ones. They were all attached together. I had joined in 2004, but they didn't really build the dragon area until like 2006, 2007. So eventually, while in the beginning, mostly it was Elena playing Second Life, around 2006, 2007, the Dragon Sims came up. Now, one of the reasons I created these Dragon Sims is because they had created a new avatar, and I sure do hope I have a picture of it somewhere. I took a recent snapshot, but these were the biggest avatars yet to be created on SL. Tishilin. Oh, I'm getting it. Tishilin. Do you know? Were you on Second? Yes, of course. I saw you on Second Life at one point. Can you explain also to them in text more about what Second Life was, so I could keep to the history of it? Tashilin is going to explain that part, I hope, while I go on to the Dragon Sims. They had created the biggest avatars that had yet been made on Second Life, using all kinds of hacks There was a lot of hacking involved, but eventually they made it so that you could be like the rough equivalent of 15 to 20 foot long. And the basic avatar on Second Life is like humanoid size, humanoid shaped, and the amount of programming that had to go into making that you could run around as a dragon. Let's see if I could just bring up. Did I? Okay, I'll just keep talking while I look it up. Those were like the first avatars to not only let you be a huge dragon, but also be a dragon at all that wasn't anthropomorphic. Actually, creating animations to walk around feral at that early time in Second Life was a very difficult cause. Second Life in those days didn't actually want to allow too much what they would call avatar deformation because it could lead to hacks and stuff. We're going to see if I can find a picture of a dragon avatar. Rise, slide, come on. Rainbow Dragon 02. Come on. Oh, that's one of the anther ones. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you one of the anther ones because it's just sitting right there. This is not, what do you call it? This is not exactly what I'm talking about with the huge dragon avatars, but by darn. Open it up. Come on, copy. But this was one of the early dragon avatars that I went around in. It's not very detailed. Oh God, it's a bitmap. I didn't know we... Hey, I don't want a bitmap. I want copy. Are you really kidding me? That's a freaking bitmap. I posted it into the channel panel discussion 13. Delete. But I think I'm going to need to... Come on, delete it. Delete. Okay, I've forgotten how to do anything. There. I'm going to do this a different way. Shift Alt S. Okay, 17. Okay, I'm an idiot. Sorry. 17. Here we go. Dirt balls. I don't know how I got interconnected there. Yes, thank you for capturing that for me. That was one of the first dragon avatars that were ever created. It is a modification of... Yes, that was a... I customized the wings. I also customized the texture that's on me to match my own colors. It is not a perfectly accurate representation, but by damn, it was close to me, and that's all that mattered. I want to know where I put the snapshots I took from... Actually, I think I put the snapshots I took from Second Life here on the server at some point. So they're in here somewhere, aren't they? I'll find them later. I don't want to delay the whole thing looking for that. Oh, the avatars get better. And there are still places you can go and buy dragon avatars, even though I was looking around. But most of the people have gone over to VR chat. Honestly, VR chat is the future. Okay, now I'm really insisting. As image. By me. Because I'm very sure I posted that at some point. Oops, keep scrolling. I did not post... Oh, this is my current one. Even though nobody barely plays. Copy image. I didn't post... I didn't get the picture of the big dragon avatars because it now renders broken because SL has changed so much. So I'm just going to post this other one here in 17, which is my current one. Oh yes, I'm talking it's the Istari avatars. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I look like now. Which is much more colorful, much more detailed, but is also not feral, so whatever. But back to the community part of it, there was several communities that dragons hung out in Second Life. The major one was dragon simulators where they sold the Astari avatars and where they were made. And they just created an area for people to use them because they were so huge that a lot of people didn't want you to go into their areas with these huge avatars because you would be bigger than everybody else and it'd be super disruptive and stuff. And people just weren't down with that. Makes me sad. But so they created their own simulator so that the dragons would have a place to be dragons. I'm trying to see in my SL directory if I ever took a snapshot of the dragon stuff. And it's looking like no. But later on, even more dragons came out. Some of them were tiny and feral. And I got those and just called them my rainbow dragon ones. Put the right wings on them. I should have logged into Second Life to do that, but we're not going to do that right now. And eventually the dragons would become more detailed. The other two communities that I met a lot of dragons in Second Life was there was this other place that was run by elves. And it was Elvenmoor, Elvenglen. Yep. They were still going 10 years or 6 years ago because I've been very sparing after 2011. I would say I've been very sparing about using Second Life at all. Mostly because all of my favorite places had disappeared by then. But the Elven Glen, the Fairy Glen, they basically made it so that dragons could be accommodated because the fairies wanted dragons in their sims because, to be honest, there is a lot of dragons in, shall we say, the other alter planes of fairy. To Fae, dragons are as real as they are. So, I mean, all Fae are going to be accepting of dragons, unless they're really freaking weird. So, they wanted dragons in their sim, and they allowed all the dragons to go over there, and that also, so the Fairy Glen was really, and these, I'm not talking about one sim when I'm talking about that. Sorry, I let you distract me. Just chilling. Just chilling. See, now I'm getting it. The other one was a place called Avalon that was very hard role play, but if you went in as a dragon for Avalon, you were bound to a specific set of rules, and because they had a theme, they had a particular way that they, in their canon, that dragons had a role. So if you were playing a dragon, you had to play to a specific set of stuff, and if you deviated from that, you were probably getting banned. So sucks are there, but a lot of dragons. I know one dragon who was running one of the administrators called Sarkella, and she didn't seem to have any problem with this. I did. I ended up banned from that community because I was trying to roleplay and apparently breaking all of their rules because, for one thing, I was too small to be a dragon. I shit you not. So those were the three major communities for dragons in SL. Now there was also some simulators that weren't specifically dragon communities, but were dragon focused. Like there was one, Furnation had a Furnation dragon sim, which was a general furry community, but all the dragons, of course, went to live in Furnation dragons, so they would have dragon things going around there. Then the Fur Valley set of sims, which had places like Fox Valley, Rabbit Valley, etc. They also had a Dragon Valley that a lot of dragons hung out in and lived in. And mostly the dragons hung out in Draco and its surrounded sims. So that brings us up to about 2010 and going a little bit afterwards. One of the funny things I have found, this is a side note, this is on the side, entirely on the side, is that a lot of dragons, when the pony sims came up, went and made pony characters in the MLP sims. And that was kind of like, I had always wondered why, like if there was some kind of connection between being equine and being a dragon that made the pony sims so attractive to them. I thought that there was an Astaria in SL, but I really didn't get involved because mostly because of the experience I had in Avalon. Oh, I actually didn't want to RP myself in Second Life. I wanted to be myself in Second Life. And that pretty much put me at odds with in any of the roleplay sims, even though I wanted to go in, see the other dragons, see what was going on, participate somehow. I recognize that name, Sargoth, but I understand very little about Astaria in general. I do know that they were some of the first dragon models, but cool. I have one of those dragon models that I modified to look like myself, but like I said, it's now broken beyond repair because of updates in SL. I want to see if there's any other dragon stuff I got around here related to Second Life. Oh, this is cute. I'll copy that in. Bitch, I want to copy you. Oh, this is a bitmap again. Do you have an imager that can bitmap? Shut up, Elena. Shut up. I'm an imager. All right. This is one of the furry complexes on there. And you could see that there's actually Kitsune Valley was a Linus sim. And right at the south there was Dragon Valley, where a whole bunch of dragons hung out. And I would go down there and hang out. It was right next door to Elena Sim, and she was living there anyway. Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. That reminds me of a whole nother thing. A little piece of history that occurred on Second Life. So there was this one lady at one point. Actually, I'm going to go Google it quick. I'm going to reference this. There was one lady at one point decided to basically wire herself up to motion capture and stuff and live as a dragon in Second Life for I don't know how long it went. 365 hours. Yeah, definitely click that link because you'll see what was going on there, and she wrote a book about it. But at one point, Elena was doing a lot of basically Elena was doing what we're doing here. She would have a monthly otherkin meet going on in Second Life where a whole bunch of otherkin would come and we would have discussions just like this every month in Second Life. And she ended up the person who was doing Becoming Dragon ended up coming because they had heard that there were other people doing who felt that they were dragons or foxes or other things. So she came to one of my otherkin panels at one point, and we basically got to tell her, no, you're not alone. This is actually common as dirt. And I think she wrote about this particular thing in her group there, in her book. She wrote a book about the experience of basically living as a dragon in Second Life. I want to link this particular video too. Copy. All right. Do I have to click through to Vimeo? Really? Do I really have to click all the way through to Vimeo? Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to give you the direct link to the video. That was also a part of it. So that was a thing that happened there that, I mean, I was quite surprised that she was doing this thing as some kind of contrast to the 1-year requirement to being out and presenting as a woman before getting surgery is one of the parallels she was drawing to that. But she also said that she chose doing this as a dragon because she felt that she might be a dragon. And mine, like I said, I was like, no, a lot of people think I'm a dragon. I bring out my big, actually working Rice-like avatar at that time, a variation of the Astaria one that was in all sorts of colors. And I think she got something very interesting out of it. And she discovered the otherkin community through the things that I was, what do you call it? I mean, not specifically me. I mean, so the problem is when I talk system-wise, but multiple of us participate in it, but mostly Elena organizes this stuff, so she's actually the one holding it, but I was also participating. I was the one participating that day because, well, we basically had somebody who was trying to be a dragon in Second Life through full immersion, which is unheard of at the time. And I was like, I want to be the first other dragon that you meet in Second Life. Anyway, my time in Second Life lasts till 2010, even though it still exists to this day. It's a shell of itself. There's almost no point to me talking. Oh, virtual nudity? Oh, sorry. Let me. That, yeah, just read the content in warning and don't click through if you're a minor. But that particular video is too important for me to just delete. I actually kind of want to see what else was in it. I haven't seen this video in like 20 years. Okay, we're not doing that right now. It's too loud. Oh, that was another one of the dragons there. Oh gosh, I actually want to see if she filmed inside my sim. Well, she was one of these pictures was. Oh yeah, that was her, Asdel Slade, in one of the Astaria ones, I think. Looking around. Jumping around too much. I'll see if I can look through it later. But yeah, it pretty much this video pretty much details how she hooked herself up and all right. I can't keep looking at that. So it's basically I was out of the dragon community in general between 2010 to like just recently, actually, because the way I rediscovered the dragon community is by while I was looking for somebody and trying to figure out what had happened. Old dragon. Basically, I don't know if any of you remember Walkspar. Walkspar was also an indigenous dragon that I lived with in the 19.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, indigenous dragon. Whoopee.
I don't know if he's alive or not.
That's sad to hear.
Because he was like in his 60s when I lived with him, and that was almost 30 years ago. But his name was Walkspar, and he also taught me a bunch of stuff. He was willing to share indigenous practices with me. But I also ended up feeling like this is not actually the way I'm being called. And at that time, I didn't know it was 1997. I didn't know which way I was going, but it was kind of like I had also learned from my grandmother, and she gave me a pretty solid foundation in Celtic practice. I'm glad to have been exposed to those things, but that wasn't going to be my path.
Understandable. I have a quick question, though, just out of my own curiosity. Do you know Walksfar's tribal affiliation?
I don't remember it anymore.
Understandable. I was just curious.
Wait, what?
What?
Just what do you call it? Tashilin has seen Walkspar. When was that? When was that? Because I'm trying to, what do you call it? He's not a person I want to be disconnected to. So this is how I refound the dragon community. I was looking for Walkspar, trying to reconnect with him for my own spiritual reasons. Because, like I said, I learned indigenous practices, but a number of different magical things from him. And he taught me a lot while I was with him, because, well, I was kind of serious about it. But I want to reconnect to him again. I was just thinking of him like 28, 29, maybe it was 1997, 2010, 2017, or 27 years later. So I went to Alfandria Muck, and of course, yeah, I don't know. Needless to say, I still haven't found him. I went on Alfandria Muck and saw a link to a Discord there. So I followed the Discord, which dropped into Raw, which is where all the AFD dragons have actually went to hide, apparently. It didn't take me much to, verify myself there, because most of the old beans knows who I am. But then I ended up going from there to the Celestial Spire because they linked me over to that. And in the last couple months, I've been reconnecting with a community that I really hadn't been connected with for 15 years, that I just thought I lost. And I'm just starting to remember how I lost that community and the things, because it was that long ago. And honestly, I think that I was trying to shut them out. Not the community, but the memories of the stuff that was going on at the time. Because, I mean, at the same time that the crap with IRC was going down, I was also being viciously grilled in the Therian community, and Alina was an actual basket case, because they were basically, I got viciously grilled, she got fucking torn apart. They were saying, why don't you just rip off your wings so that you could be Fox? And it's like, she almost did. She almost did. And she was just trying to gain acceptance in a community she felt she belonged in, because when they described her experience or their experiences, she could identify with those experiences. And so could I. I could identify with those experiences on a draconic level. But, I mean, for them, dragons were right out. Of course, the person who helped found the Therian community, Jackal, started her existence online as a dragon wolf. So, whatever. I can't tell you much about the dragon community between 2010 and now, but that isn't really history anymore. Thank you. You're welcome, and I wouldn't mind like talking to other people who are around. I mean, I wouldn't mind talking to anybody, but I have a special interest for people who were back in the dragon community when I was super active in it. I've never stopped being a dragon, but I fell away from that community, and honestly, it's not like there wasn't dragon community on Second Life. It's not like on my own Discord server I don't have an abundance of dragons. It's like I was never like avoiding dragons. I just lost the community. I'm glad I reserved 3 hours, or what do you call it, 2 hours plus for this, because now I could actually get to questions, if anybody has any. And if anybody wants to come up here and talk about if they were very in the community very long ago, if they want to recall any of their history with it or what they remember of history, it's time to open up that stage?
Yeah, and I can approve the stage request.
Okay, great. If not, I'm probably going to float over to other topics until somebody volunteers.
I'll actually go ahead and volunteer. The human soul wasn't around. Actually, for those who don't know, I awakened as Lunata in 2020. Anything before that, I don't consider my memories. So anything pre-2020, I refer to as the human soul's memories. So the human soul was introduced to the Otherkin community through DeviantArt, Otherkin art groups in 2011, and essentially only lurked, never interacted until 2014. That's besides the point. I know that there was a very active Dragonkin and Otherkin community on DeviantArt from the early 2000s to around 2011. Most of the groups that the Human Soul found in 2011 were nearly died out by then. Unfortunately, they were more active in the early 2000s, late 2000s. So I do know that that community existed, and I did find some of my longtime Dragonkin friends through DeviantArt, Otherkin groups. And a lot, from what I remember, a lot of the community of DeviantArt, the Otherkin community, a lot of interaction was shared through DeviantArt notes, and a lot of folks posted journals, and mainly art, of their kinselves and anything related to their otherkinity / alter humanity, and that's how a lot of the community on DeviantArt made connections and interacted, at least from my recollection of it.
With DeviantArt is like just to look at a couple things. Art that ends up there. I have an account on DeviantArt, but I don't look at it more than once a year.
Understandable. I'm not on DeviantArt anymore personally, so I kind of fell out of favor for my being due to multiple reasons.
As you have probably already heard, I have fallen out of favor in a couple different areas that caused me to disappear from places. Ooh,
Understandable.
I get a mention in this one. Cute. Well, Linda does. I should have mentioned my name while I was doing that, but whatever. She just went by, put it in there as my Second Life name, which at that time I wasn't maintaining separate avatars for everybody, and I certainly can't find Bryceli when I'm searching for it. So I was doing everything through Elena's avatar or Elena's account. She only has one picture of Second Life in there.
I saw a question about the DeviantArt community, and honestly, I don't really know how the DeviantArt Otherkin community thrived in the early 2000s, though. I imagine many of the members of the DeviantArt Otherkin community were also very active on like IRC chat rooms, Skype chat rooms, forums, etc. It probably wasn't the only place, though I know DeviantArt had a lot of appeal back in those days. Because
maybe they just didn't know there was other places you could go to have those interactions.
Yeah. Though I imagine because it was such a popular site and so much artwork was shared, I imagine like with the human soul was like, oh well, this site is so cool. Oh, maybe there's other kid who will post art of themselves in this on this website. That was the appeal for the human soul. Like, oh, I want to see cool otherkin art, and I imagine that was the same for a lot of folks or they just felt that they wanted to share these illustrations and journals with the DeviantArt community. I don't know what the appeal was for everyone, though. All I know is that DeviantArt was a cool site in the early 2000s. I have very fond memories of it.
I personally do not have any opinion one way or the other on DeviantArt. It's just, I kind of wish I could have been part of the history there, but at the same time, yeah, every single time I created a new community, I made a lot of communities, and Elena made more communities, and we had a lot to do. But every single time I did that, it was a community that allowed me to interact in real time. We have a problem, possibly psychological, in that boredom is pain. If we stay too quiet for too long, it actually starts to hurt. I don't know why. Nobody can explain that crap, but it probably had a lot to do with my psychological problems when I was young. Of course, how can I call my current identity a psychological problem? Because my very existence is a psychological problem. Like, if I were a normal human without this issue of being dragon, I wouldn't even be here. But I probably wouldn't have ended up in the mental hospital when I was, 9, 11, and 13 either. But I wouldn't trade it. I would not trade it.
Understandable. I do have another question, though.
Yeah.
So Altanok posted some of those old archived links from spaces that are no longer up, and some spaces from Alt Fan Dragons and a few other miscellaneous sites. Do you recognize any of those resources? And if so, when did you first stumble across them?
I do recognize some of those resources. I mean, I'm going to have to, I mean, Bakil is not here right now, even though it says he's online. He's doing something else. But there was twice in our lives that Bakil lived with me. And I was introduced to his stuff very early on. Like, one of the first things that he put in front of me was the, Draconic back. And then when we started doing magic stuff together, and exploring spirituality and stuff, he also put in front of me a very influential book on my own views of magic, which was called the Edinburgh Lectures of Mental Science, which made an attempt to explain how you could use magic as a mental science and how certain things might work. And it also introduced me to the idea of consensus reality, which is reality is basically defined by the people who are part of it. And the more people who believe that magic things can occur, the more possible it becomes, because there isn't mind resistance to accepting that idea. Everybody's basically casting some of their own magic at all times, and that's part of their own baseline intent, what they're willing to accept as real and willing to not accept as real. There's been, and this is one of the reasons why I think there was a lot of magic on Earth back in the old days, but there's incrementally less and less magic. We first, not we, but I'm talking about humanity now. Humanity started demonizing first dragons, of course, dragons are the big part, so they have to cast what do you call it, dragons as demons. And then the church started casting fae as demons, and all of these things, creating stories of evil and people getting eaten, and fairies having ill intent, and like vampires, werewolves, and basically saying Therians will do you like an animal and eat your bones. And all of these things have contributed to basically a field of disbelief, which also protects them from, yeah, I kind of wish, but it basically shields us from, it shields them from us, from our existence, but also but the people who disbelieve now have a shielding against having to deal with things that they have been trained not to believe in. In other words, the reality of the world is being affected by what, and you could see this principle in quantum mechanics too. Bias towards a result affects what comes about, and everybody's ambient intent, which is part of their belief system, limits what can be real on this world. But this world doesn't actually have that limitation. It is the people who have that limitation. And humans didn't have that, or like 100,000 years ago, they and humans, dragons, living side by side, and everything was okay until power struggles came about, and people just decided to start ignoring each other, demonizing them, saying that basically that these things are evil, making a definition for what should be and what should not be. Human beings have closed themselves off from the fantastical reality of what could have been. Like, and because of the way that they create, that not they don't consciously create it, but they're creating it on and at a subconscious level, limits in what they can believe. It basically establishes reality as a force like gravity, which is causing their own beliefs to bias towards one-to-one chances of happening. The things. This is why earlier I had said that magic is basically a probability tweak. Everything that could possibly happen could happen. It's just up there above your temporal head in a space of less and less possibility. But those possibilities could be lower if we truly believe in the possibility of them occurring. There might have been some ancient knowledge in that diatribe. I'm done for the moment. Sorry.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
When you look back on the Draconic communities from like 1995 through, let's say, 2003, what would you say are your most fond memories of your time in in any community during those times?
See here. Alphandria was a big one. I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't mention at the moment that I rejoined RAR, the first person that I recognized was a person that I was in love with, and I do not fall out of love easily, and whose name I consistently mispronounce. Yeah. Don't be too embarrassed. Just Tissilin. I have to remember that the C is not pronounced, even though it's capitalized. The reason I have so much trouble with that name is because T apostrophe S is what do you call it? In Currensonian, the language that I learned from a previous life, that is kind of stuck as like that. And I keep on trying to erase the C at the end because I know that's not how it's pronounced. But it keeps declicking in my head. I literally have to erase something from my own alphabet to ever be able to get that right. I can't really do that because I didn't really write that alphabet, but I mean, it's there. Oh, we want to talk about consensus reality. The easiest way to do that, what you're going beyond or resisting the forces of society. Okay, that's easy. Become part of a coven. Hi, Hermes. Okay. Because or become part of a magic group or get involved with other people who have similar beliefs like that, because you could create pockets. They would call them fairy freeholds in some game that I forget what it was called. Doesn't really matter. I like the term, which is basically a space or liminally, not subliminally, liminally separated from this world. You could create a space like in your own house. You could create this space in your own house. I personally have covered over a bunch of windows so that in the at least pointing out front, not pointing in back where my circle is, but just to keep the vibe of the outdoors where the street and cars and stuff are out of the visual area of people who are living in the house, in order to create a space that is liminally separate. You would and if you create a space that is liminally separate and safe for spirits like dragons, dragon spirits, fae, etc. to come, they will come. So, I mean, a lot of them want to interact, but they don't want to interact with that out there, the unbelieving masses of people that demonize them. You want to. I do not know what that is. Go ahead and explain Tissilin. Sorry, I sometimes have other people who will come out and talk without any prompting. So, and some of them are like celebrating the fact that I'm actually getting this right. Like in my backyard, I posted a picture back up in another channel. I should draw it into here. Was it 16? No. It was probably 15. Ooh. Or was it 14? Anyway, that picture, which I will find while I'm talking, is of the ritual circle in my backyard. This was used by a coven called Star Moon Coven for over 13 years. And it has the energy of people putting 13 years into it. And then the coven dissolved during COVID. And a lot of the people who used to live here actually moved out. Oh, I will have to look at that. Ah, I got the picture. Because of cultivating this space and me then picking up after the old coven dissolved and deciding I'm going to care for it, I want to keep this energy, bringing and doing my own rituals and my own Fae discussions in my backyard, Fae have stayed. And this is a fairy freehold. I will just say straight up from the moment that you open my door and walk inside, the moment that's closed, you're basically in another dimension. Because I built this area to have that. And in that area, the possibilities for magical things to happen increase because the liminal space was created for it and basically given borders in which, okay, this area here, like I said, the salt thing going around the entire property, this entire area inside this salt here thing is a wall, and inside we will have a space of magic, a space of belief, a space where fairies, dragon spirits, etc., all of the spirits who want to come and visit in peace can come and visit. This is, yes, this is as close as I can get to have a forest in my backyard. And it does not match too closely with what I am used to having in previous lives as a territory, which is a forest of unbroken leaves, a sea of leaves, if you will, where, as I once said, it takes 10 minutes for the rain to reach the ground because it has to go through so many leaves. But you know what? Even on a sunny day, it's shaded because there's a lot more leaves on the trees during the summer. This is much closer to fall time. When that was taken. It was a couple months ago. There's even less stuff on the trees right now. But, I mean, okay, let me share another picture because this is also part of my practice. Very important. And I feel it's also important to that this actually helps with cultivating a space of that attracts nature spirits. Panel discussion 17. We need to change channels. Is my panel almost over? And yes, I'm going to scroll back just a little bit. There's always fresh pictures here. There's one picture. Yeah, that's a funny picture. I'll share that one too. Oh, that's a good picture. Let's get some squirrels. Show me some squirrels. Oh, there's one. Here's some pictures. There are places where I put stuff down for animals to nom on. And there's a place for them to get water right in the backyard. There's my kitty sitting on my coffee maker, observing the absurd number of blue jays that will come and pick off the table. The TLDR is cultivate natural space in your backyard if you've got one. cultivate that natural space because it'll increase the energy and the availability of energy for any ritual you're going to do. They like to act through the animals. If even, like, say, if you put a Fae offering out there, even if some cat comes by and picks it up and takes it off, you're basically watching this Fae in action. It doesn't matter what you call it. They have their ways of interacting with the physical world, even if the field of ambient intent, what the world wants to be real, is acting on the entire world, they still have their ways. I think I can confidently say that about spirits in general, including indigenous entities, that they will find their way to interact with the world if they want to. I'm done for the moment.
Looks like we do have 14 minutes until our next panel, though. So,
All right.
would you like to close off the panel and say some closing words?
I'll be available to talk if we want to continue with this for a little bit in the bot channel underneath, or in the Dragon Spirit channel. I try to teach this stuff, but I also have a very busy life. I actually have to work full time to keep a place like this going. So, but if I can teach, I will share what I know. And as I said earlier, I will not tell you who, because this was a big issue back in the early 2000s. I will not tell you what your path is, but I'm very happy to share suggestions for and how I can help. And I will see you at the next summit.
Understandable. Thank you so much for sharing all of this community history and documenting all of this history. It's like it's so amazing and so beneficial, honestly. So thank you so much for doing that.
Well,
all right, we will see you all in Draconic Voice.